Shalom. They will be in Ezekiel chapter 26. Everyone would turn there. So last couple of weeks, the theme has been that when we as his people do wrong, we are punished. When we sin, there is a wage that we are paid for that work. Now, Hadesh tells us the wages of sin is death. Okay? But that is a message to the non-believer. Scripture very plainly says that if we are his, if we are positionally sanctified in his covenant, we cannot lose that. And I'm not preaching once saved, always saved, in the sense that if people say, well, I'm just always going to be blessed. I'm saying that if he holds you in his hand, in the power of Elohim, no man can take you from him. No demon can take you from him. What we can lose is our progressive sanctification. If we are walking with him for years and years and we are doing well and things are great, and then we stumble, there's going to be a punishment because he is Abba, he is Father. And it is not our place to question the extent of the punishment. It's not our place to question the length of the punishment. It is our place as children to try to learn the lesson that he has for us in the punishment. And then, in last week's message, it turns around and says, okay, now that my children have learned their lesson, now I will exact judgment upon the Gentiles. Because while my children were being punished, while we had, as in the Midrash on Brother Melech's teaching, we talked about, there is the spot, there is the mark, there is the place for his children. And if we are not walking in his covenant, then we do not belong in that spot or to have that spot as our mark. We are not part of his flock if we are not living as part of his flock. We are, but we are distinguishable from those who are doing what they were supposed to do. And when the Gentiles look at us, then they mock us and say, weren't you a part of that flock over there? And now look what you've done. Okay? And as the saying goes, the number one cause of atheism in the world is people who profess to belong to him and then walk out into the world and deny him by their lifestyle. Okay? But when that has been reconciled, when retribution has been made and the punishment is finished, then those Gentiles who mocked us, who scourged us spiritually, who mocked him through us, then they receive their punishment. Okay? And we see this happen over and over again. We see it happen in individual lives. We see it happen on the national level. Throughout the world, this has been the pattern. Okay, so when we left off last week, he was talking about he was going to exact his vengeance upon each of the nations which had a hand in destroying Jerusalem and Yisrael. Okay, and so he says last week when it started off says. I guess it was 2 weeks ago. I believe he said it was in the 9th year. 2 weeks ago, he said this process started in the 9th year of his prophecy. Now here we are in the 11th year. It says, in the 11th year of his prophecy, on the first of the month, and the Hebrew there, I think, probably leans itself more to on the first of the moon, which we know the biblical or on the first moon. We know the biblical month starts at the new moon. Okay, but I believe here he's saying that it was the first moon of the year. Okay, like the new year has begun. So we're right around Pesach. And that is my interpretation. There are a lot of scholars who would say I was wrong, and that's fine. That's just how I read it. On the first of the month of the first moon, the word of Yehovah came to me. So this is Mashiach again in pre-incarnate form. O mortal, because Tyre gloated over Jerusalem, aha! The gateway of the peoples is broken. It is become mine. I shall be filled now that it is laid in ruins. Assuredly, thus said Yehovah Elohim. Now, before we go into what Yehovah says, here's what happened. Tyre, the king of Tyre, the leadership of that land, is gloating, saying, here's the gateway of the peoples. And that's what Israel, the land, was called long before we lived there. If you look at it on a world map, it is the center of the known world at that time. And if you wanted to pass from one region of the world to the other, you had to pass through what is now Jerusalem, or you had to go by sea. Okay? If you were not a seafaring country, or if you were not wealthy and could not afford passage, you could at least walk through Eretz Jerusalem, or Eretz Yisrael. I apologize. But he's gloating specifically over Jerusalem. So Yehovah responds and says, I am going to deal with you, O Tyre. You notice he doesn't say, Yisrael is going to deal with you, O Tyre. And this is a hard pill to swallow. I said this last week, I'll say it again. It is not our place to exact revenge upon those who do us wrong when we are being punished by Abba, when he is correcting us. It is his place. And unless he specifically shows us beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are to be his tool for that, we are to stand back and allow him to fight our battle for us. And that is hard because our flesh wants vengeance. The vengeance is his. That is what his word says. Vengeance is his and not ours to take. I will hurl many nations against you as the sea hurls its waves. They shall destroy the walls of Tyre and demolish her towers, and I will scrape her soil off her and leave her a naked rock. Wow. Not even fertile soil for anybody to want to go settle there. She shall be in the heart of the sea, a place for drying nets. For I have spoken it, declares Yehovah Elohim. Because I've said it, I'm going to do it, so that you, O Tyre, know who I am. And guess what? Also so that my children never forget. Because it's easy to remember who he is when we're seeing him correct us. And as soon as he's done, we have a human tendency to begin to forget our place. Sent my wife it's kind of a meme, I guess, on Instagram the other day. It had this soldier from the IDF, and he was in uniform, and he had his rifle, and he also had his tali on, and it showed him. I'm going to guess he was praying toward Jerusalem. I couldn't see that from the picture, and it had a quote from the Psalms, and it says, "And we will set tables before our enemies, and Yehovah will destroy them." Okay, it is not our place to do what he has said is his to do. She shall become spoil for the nations, and her daughter towns in the country shall be put to the sword, and they shall know that I am Yehovah. Think about that. What was destroyed? What was destroyed when they came against Jerusalem? Jerusalem. Not all of the daughter towns. There's no mention in the entire book that all of the daughter towns were wiped out. But when he exacts his vengeance, when he goes and destroys those who would have destroyed us, What does he destroy? Not only their capital, but all of the daughter towns. Why? Because what he did to us was not vengeance. What he did to us was loving correction. What he did to us was akin to me swatting the bottom of my child and sending her to her room for the rest of the evening because I don't want her to learn bad things from the neighbors. I don't want her to do the things of the world. What he does to our enemies, that is vengeance. For thus said Yehovah Elohim, I will bring from the north against Tyre King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, a king of kings. Now some people read that and they say, wait a minute, is he saying he's like a Messiah? No. In this context, it literally means that he is a king who has conquered other kings. Other kings give him, they bow down to him. Okay? With horses, chariots, and horsemen, a great mass of troops. He says, you think what you took against Israel and Jerusalem was great? You've not seen anything yet. Your daughter towns in the country he shall put to the sword. He shall erect towers against you and cast up mounds against you and raise a wall of bucklers against you. He shall turn the force of his battering rams against your walls and smash your towers with his axes. From the cloud raised by his horses, dust shall cover you. He says this to the entire capital city and the daughter towns. Just the dust from the horses will cover you. You've seen nothing yet. From the clatter of horsemen and wheels and chariots, your walls shall shake. Interesting, we were just talking about seismic waves in the last teaching. When he enters your gates as men enter a breached city, with the hoofs of his steeds he shall trample all your streets. Now think about this. He's entering their city through the gates as though he has breached the wall. The gates will stand open. There will be no defense, and he will bring his entire army in without ever having to breach your defense. You, the enemy of my people, who tried to destroy my people, shall be destroyed. He shall put your people to the sword, and your mighty pillars shall crash to the ground. They shall plunder your wealth and loot your merchandise. They shall raise your walls and tear down your splendid houses. And they shall cast into the water your stones and timber and soil. They're going to take what they want and ruin everything else. You know, when they came against us, they plundered Jerusalem, and the rest of the country kind of went into chaos because there was no more leadership. Everything fell that way, but the rest of the country was pretty much left standing. Not so for Tyre. I will put an end to the murmur of your songs, and the sound of your lyres shall be heard no more. I will make you a naked rock. You shall be a place for drawing nets. You shall never be rebuilt, for I have spoken, declares Yehovah Elohim. And you know what? He gave that promise. You shall never be rebuilt. And guess what to this day has never been rebuilt? The city of Tyre. That's pretty absolute. You notice he never said that about Jerusalem. He never said that about Eretz Yisrael. He said it about Tyre, and it came to happen. It came to be. And what he said would never happen has never happened in all of these thousands of years. Thus said Yahweh Elohim to Tyre, the coastland shall quake at the sound of your downfall, when the wounded groan, when slaughter is rife within you. All the rulers of the sea shall descend from their thrones. They shall remove their robes and strip off their embroidered garments. They shall clothe themselves in trembling and shall sit on the ground. They shall tremble every moment, and they shall be aghast at you, and they shall intone a dirge over you, and they shall say to you, and I'll stop right there for a second. The kings of other seafaring nations were going to look at what happened to Tyre as a result of their attempt to destroy us as a people. And Elohim says they're going to tremble because they saw what happened to you, and they're going to thank the heavens that they didn't try to destroy you, destroy my people the way you did. And it will stand as a testimony throughout time that anyone who attempts to harm or molest in any way the people of my covenant, I will reckon with them. How you have perished. This is what he says, the dirge they sing. He says they're going to sing to Tyre. How you have perished, you who were peopled from the seas. People came from all the known seafaring nations and settled there and became subjects of Tyre. And he says they're going to sing this dirge over you. O renowned city, mighty on the sea were she and her inhabitants, who cast their terror on all its inhabitants. Now shall the coastlands tremble on the day of your downfall, and the coastlands by the sea be terrified at your end. They're singing a song saying everything that he said they would think. They're singing the song that says that as proof that he is true. What he has said is true. For thus said Yahweh Elohim, when I make you a ruined city, like cities empty of inhabitants, when I bring the deep over you and its mighty waters cover you, then I will bring you down with those who go down to the pit. It's interesting considering the midrash on the last teaching. To the people of old, I will install you in the netherworld, and those who go down to the pit like the ruins of old, so that you shall not be inhabited and shall not radiate splendor in the land of the living. Now that's harsh. What did he say to us? I am going to send you into captivity for a time proper and equivalent to when you have disobeyed me. That will be your punishment. I will keep a remnant. I will bring that remnant back, and you will again build up the waste places. You will again anoint the temple. You will again worship me as our covenant says that you will worship me. You will be my people. I will be your Elohim. That's what he told us when he sent us into captivity. What does he say to them? I will put you in your place in the netherworld, and you will never shine splendor into the land of the living again. How much more wonderful it is to be his child, is it not? I will make you a horror, and you shall cease to be. You shall be sought, but shall never be found again, declares Yehovah Elohim. And to this day, archaeologists try to find exactly where the city of Tyre was. They have thoughts, they have opinions. One of them that I've read says the city of Tyre became the basis for the legend called Atlantis. Makes sense. He said, I'll cover you with the deep. To send you to place you in your place in the netherworld. It makes sense. And they will find a place and they'll say, this is ancient Tyre. See, the Bible is wrong. We were able to find it. And 6 months, a year later, there's this little bitty retraction saying, well, actually, we found out it was this other ancient city, possibly in the same area as Tyre, but it's not Tyre. In the 20 some odd years I've been walking in faith, I've lost track of how many times archaeologists said they found this city and then had to recant that. It won't be found. Okay? I have stopped even caring when they say, oh, it's been found. Because I know there will be a recantation later on, a redaction of that statement saying, oh, no, it was this other city. And then I really care because I like to know what other ancient cities they found, especially through biblical references. Midrash? Yes.
When they say that, it's like, what are cities going to be this time? And just like look at all these ancient cities. No, I was actually thinking about something that the last chapter, and it kind of makes more sense with this chapter too. We talked about, I talked about how the Ammonites and the Moabites, they weren't wiped out.
Right.
But I was thinking too, and you probably thought of this, they are distant cousins to, further distant cousins to Edom. They're distant cousins to Lot. So you got to think that even though they're different nations, that's part of the reason why
They're part of the family.
They're part of the family, so that's why they didn't get wiped out, and these other countries,
right, and it's like when we went back into the land. Elohim said, you can wipe out this nation and this nation and this nation, but you got to give some space to this nation because they're your relative through Abraham. Yeah. I agree. That's probably a huge part of it why they weren't wiped out. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
Years ago, authored a pamphlet about this chapter.
Yeah.
And over the later years, the 80s, I guess it was, it drew it to publication because it's been proven that what he was saying was actually not true. That many of these cities that they claim to never be built can actually have been rebuilt. And they actually withdrew this booklet, and I kept thinking, well, I don't think that that's happened, but I don't know why they withdrew his booklet. It was one of the most, for me, it was one of the things that really opened the Bible up to me because I saw these things happen. God made these statements, and they're true. And so
it's the same phenomenon that we have going on with the whole creation evolution debate. Okay, for generations, no one questioned creation. Okay, and then they came up with this whole evolution thing, and they were teaching it in public schools. And then the church said, "Well, what are we going to do?" Not necessarily that denomination, but different churches said, "What are we going to do? Our kids are coming to us, and they're saying they've seen fossils that were millions of years old, and the Bible only says 6,000 years, not even that." And then what are we going to do? And they said, well, then we'll just, we'll say you can align the two, and the dates in the Bible aren't necessarily factual, like set dates. And then they got to where the first 11 chapters of Genesis didn't matter. They threw it out. But along with that, they threw out the first reference to sin, the first reference to salvation, the first reference to the power of blood, the first reference to marriage, the first reference to Messiah, the first reference to salvation, okay, and a whole lot of other things they threw out, saying that's just Jewish folklore. start with Genesis 12 and go forward. Okay, as soon as you do that, then the kids are like, well, then I don't need 12 or 13 or Exodus or Leviticus, and then we just throw out the whole, the whole Tanakh, and we just focus on the Brit Hadash, which makes no sense without the Tanakh. It makes no sense without the first 11 chapters of Genesis. And now groups are stepping up, being faithful to the word, and saying, you know what? If it says it, we believe it. Period. And that's really, it's shaking the rafters, basically. Because now they're finding that, hey, yeah, there's a fossil there, but we say it took millions of years, and we can go into a laboratory and with the right, right circumstances, the right heat, the right pressure and everything, guess what? We can form a fossil in a month. Okay. And we can, they say, well, carbon-14 dating. Well, carbon-14 dating doesn't work on anything accurately on anything that's been under a great deal of water pressure. So anything that died before the flood or during the flood, you can't carbon-14 date. There's no way to do it. Okay, especially if it's been under salt water, it's skewed by millions of years. Wow, that throws out the whole thing. But because they did what it sounds like was done with that pamphlet, unfortunately, is they compromised and they said, well, there's all this scholarly research that goes against the pamphlet. We'll just take the pamphlet away. They should have kept the pamphlet out there and shot holes in the scholarly research, because those scholars, quote unquote, and I have trouble using that word for people who would do this, those scholars had a vested interest. They had an agenda to try to undermine scripture. Okay? It's like this thing I read the other day. Facebook friend of mine, he's a fellow writer, fellow martial artist. We do talk a lot. And he said that he had gone and interviewed, he's also in school working on a degree, and he said he went and interviewed statisticians. And he asked them, have you ever had someone try to convince you to commit statistical fraud, to make your statistics meet what they wanted rather than the facts? Okay. He found that 3 out of every 4 he interviewed said yes, they had been approached for that. Okay, and he said that as he asked more questions, 1 out of those who said that yes, they had, 1 out of every 5 had been offered money by large corporations to twist the numbers in their favor. And I said, you should ask them, have you ever been asked to lie about something that if you simply put the facts out there that it would support scripture and they wanted you to not? And he said, I wish I had thought of that when I was doing those interviews. I firmly believe if we stand on the word, we will be victorious. If we step off of the word as our foundation, we will lose every time. Every time. Anybody else? Yes, I said anybody else, not the same guy. No, what?
I just wanted to make a comment. You do know you're being inspired right now, don't you? God is really inspiring what you said, because
I hope so.
I love to hear just what you just got through saying. Absolutely beautiful, absolutely inspiring, absolutely true. And it's so good to hear somebody say that. It really is.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope he's using me. I feel he is.
You're being inspired. I know you were. I know you were.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Anybody else? Yes, brother.
Verse 20, it says, it's talking about, bringing terror to the pit, the people, and that makes me think of they found these. Well, you shared something like that before. They found different pyramids in the ocean and whatnot, and I was also thinking about what was it, the Easter Island statues that they found. They always thought they were just heads, but then they dug down into the earth, and they actually had coins, or like and stuff. And I think maybe that's talking about pre-flood civilizations, and he's saying that they've been covered. That they've been covered, so you're gonna be people of old ones that's who he's talking about.
I have thought that a lot at some points too, I'm not saying I don't believe it now. I'm saying that I think there needs to be more study on that, because it's just as possible that some great organization of people, some great civilization got really organized and covered them as part of some sort of pagan, I mean, they were all about fertility of the soil, so burying the body. I mean, it could be any number of things, but yeah, it could be that the flood covered them. That's not unthinkable at all.
When it says, verse before, it says, I'll bring the deep upon you. That's what I was thinking about that. I don't know.
Anybody else? All right.